So with the leg extension, the actual execution of the lift is quite easy. A couple things we'll talk about, but setting the machine up is often where people get tripped up. So we're going to talk about where the backrest should be. We'll talk about, how far underneath your butt you should begin, and we'll talk about where this should be on your shins, and make sure you guys are set up for success. Now, every machine's a little bit different, so take these principles and apply them to the machine that you have. So where should this begin? Well, I want you to begin the movement as far underneath your butt or with as much knee bend as you comfortably can. And so every machine's a little bit different, but I want you to, every machine will have a mechanism where you can move how early you start the movement. And I'd like to start the movement from as far underneath my butt as I comfortably can, right? Comfortably. What that's gonna do, it's gonna start with my quads in a more lengthened position. That's good for hypertrophy. Again, I stress the word comfortably because I could probably go another couple clicks, but I'd be, incredibly uncomfortable. So this is something where I'll start somewhere like this. This machine has a lot of options. Not every machine does, so you work with what you got. Number two, where should this be on your shin? Should it be, I kind of gave it away there. Should it be on your feet or, like this, on your toes or on your ankles? Or should it be up maybe more in like the middle or top of your shin, up closer to your knee? The correct answer is it should be somewhere around the bottom of your shin. It's in a good spot if you can watch my feet here. If you can flex your toes underneath the pad like that, you know that you are in a good spot. If it's so low that you can't flex your toes up or your feet upward, it's probably too low. And if it's up closer to your knee than it is to your ankle, it's probably too high. But again, I can check in a form video, no big deal. And the last variable is lining up your knee joint with the pivot point of the movement, and that's where the backrest comes into play. And so the pivot point, most of these or all of these machines are gonna move around a pivot, right? And so as the weight arm comes up, it's moving about a single point, which is right here, very identifiable on this machine. It won't always be that simple, but very likely you have something like this where you can see, okay, that's the pivot point that the weight is moving about. And you want your knee joint lining up with that because you want kind of your leg or your lower leg here kind of mimicking that weight arm. And so if I set this backrest way too close, I will have to move so far forward that I'm no longer, my knee joint and that pivot point, if you can see right here, are no longer touching or in line with one another. And so I want to scoop back and I want to back this backrest up such that I can set up with my knee joint in line with that pivot point. Now, where is your knee joint? We don't need to go crazy about this. It's not the tip of your kneecap. So it's not like I want the tip of my kneecap in line with that pivot point. It's probably maybe an inch or two in, right? This is what we're talking about right here. And so again, it's not gonna be perfect, but you'll find that when you do that, the machine is the most comfortable. And so if you kind of just go by comfort, chances are you're in a good spot. I'll also tell you if I feel you should move forward or back. But you want to set that backrest up such that when you're in the movement, the pivot point is lined up with your knee joint, which let's say is like an inch in from the end of your kneecap here. Once you're in position, you've set up the pad to start as low as possible. You have it roughly at the bottom of your shin. And you have the backrest set up so that your knee joint is in line with the pivot point. As far as executing the movement, it's pretty simple. Kick up, 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 up. As you get closer to the top, I really want to make sure you're holding on to something and you are pulling up on these handles such that you're pulling your butt down into the seat. As I get into this position right here, into this lockout, the machine's pulling me down, which is pulling my butt forward. It wants to kind of eject me out of the seat here. And so what you need to do is as you can do it throughout the whole movement. I think it's a good idea, but especially at the top when you're locked out, I need you pulling down your butt, pulling your butt down into the seat. Pulling your butt down into the seat. Unless otherwise stated, you're using a full range of motion, which means all the way down as far as the machine will allow, and then all the way up until your knees lock out. That's kind of the point of this exercise, to actually expose the knees to this, or the quads to this fully short position here. Some people will say you should lean back. Some people should say you should lean forward. There's differences to both of those. What I'd rather you do is just use the backrest and get comfortable. For me, if I lean all the way back, I can't reach the handles. And so for me, a slight lean forward so I can hold on to the handles is where I'm gonna be most comfortable. I'm not worried about anatomically what happens when I do this or when I do this. I want you guys to get comfortable. If that means a slight lean forward so you can lock yourself in, that's great. Go with that. I'll give you a couple reps here, but the execution of the lift should be pretty intuitive once you're in it. Just make sure you're pulling your butt down into the seat and really pushing into that fully locked position. Some people will say that you must flex your toes upwards, right? If we look at my feet, you got to flex the toes up. You don't have to do that. I think it's not a bad idea. It engages your anterior tib, which some people think might help with stabilization at the knee joint. I don't think that's a bad idea, but if you find it very uncomfortable, don't do it. The other thing I see is a lot of people will do some wonky things with their feet where they point their toes out or they point their toes in and they rotate their legs internally or externally like this. Don't do that shit. Point your toes forward, keep the knees and the legs forward. None of this wonky rotational shit. We don't need to do that, okay? Just gonna mess with your knees, frankly, for literally no benefit. So keep the toes straight. Try flexing the foot upwards, see how it feels. Not a big deal either way. And then get to that fully locked out position and pull your butt down into the seat.